Alright friends, the massive new Bannerlord update version 1.3 is now public, and there is a stunning amount of improvements and changes to discuss. In this episode and on our channel, we're going to continue to focus on the battlefield, and today we'll go into great detail on tactics and concepts for archery. There are major changes with 1.3, and we'll continue to give you overall archery guides to help you have success in your own game. Alright friends, welcome back again to another episode of Tactical Enlightenment. Our YouTube channel is dedicated to all things Bannerlord related, and we are jumping right in today. We will go to the custom battle menu a few times here, but we're going to be doing archer tactics and basically exploring archers in Bannerlord. Now this is thousands of hours of gameplay that I'll be trying to transmit what I've learned, but also the 15 or 20 hours of what we've learned with the 1.3 beta patch. Now we're starting here with Sturgeon archers, tier 4 and tier 5 against Imperial, tier 4 and tier 5. And this is after narration, just a disclaimer at the beginning here. But what we're doing is essentially trying to understand if the Sturgeon archers were improved. Evidently they've got a new bow, and that is supposed to help them. And when I was first shooting this, of course my character got killed and the AI took over. By the way, that's the only way we'll be able to get the overhead views until we get the RTS mod going. However, when I was first watching this, I was like, holy cow, the Sturgeon archers are a boss now, right? They're just mangling this Imperial archers. I kept looking to make sure it was fair. Tier 4 and tier 5 versus tier 4 and tier 5. Equal number of troops on both sides. And what I ultimately learned, and I hate to say this, but I ultimately learned that the AI still does not use their units very well. In fact, if you simply follow our instructions today, you will simply dominate your opposition in any kind of an archer duel with the tactics we're going to show you. And it's fairly simplistic. The major concepts are spread formation, elevation when possible, and then of course telling your units to stop once they're in the correct position. And I'll talk more about that in a second. Now we're going to do some demonstrations here. I wanted to flip the shoe onto the other foot here. I said, oh shit, maybe the Sturgeon archers are boss, like maybe they're like, you know, halfway to a fian. I was thinking maybe they gave Sturgeons this major advantage, you know, to help the fact that the rest of their units are fairly ho-hum. Most people, I think, agree that Sturgeons have the weakest kingdom as far as troop tree prior to the 1.3 beta change. We all know that they got different shields for their infantry, and we'll be covering that. Actually, their cavalry has different shields. I don't know if all of their infantry does, but a lot of their units have different, smaller shields. That's a bit disconcerting. But let's explore the other end of this and what this ultimately proves, right? We just waxed the Imperials with Sturgeon archers, so you would think that the Sturgeon archers were elite. Let's try just Aserai tier 4 and tier 5 archers against Sturgeon tier 4 and tier 5 archers. Now, my first instincts were, oh shoot, yeah, the Sturgeon archers are a boss. They're just melting our Aserai forces, where we would normally have success. And then this battle started to turn, what I would say on that side, before we get to the other elements of this episode, is that the Sturgeon archers do look improved, especially at range. They fight better. However, you could start to see the battle turning here as our structural formation here of spread archers standing still turns the day. There's a couple things that are happening here that I can explain, even in case someone from Tail Worlds is listening, because they could adjust the code simply to make these units more adequate on their own. The AI has a tendency to charge with their archers. That's what they're doing right now. That's why they're moving forward. It's either charge or engage. The problem with that is that they're moving. When they're moving, of course, they're less accurate when they're shooting, and of course sometimes there's guys in their way because they are moving. Our spread master archers just waxed the Sturgeons, basically nullifying the theory that the Sturgeon archers are the boss. All right, so let's take a step back. We've again started a battle here, and this is the only way you can get this overhead perspective. We are in the pre-battle mode. This is the formation you want your archers in with elevation. And let me explain the elevation. You want your guys higher than the enemy. And critically, every single unit must have line of sight. And I'll show you in this example of what you don't want to do. A lot of guys, you know, they'll get their archers up a hill, they'll position them, or the AI will do this, and it can lead to failures. If your units don't have line of sight, it's as good as them, almost as good as them being dead, right? It'd be like on a dodgeball team where half the guys were asleep. You're going to lose, right? Because you don't have as many people participating. It's a fairly simple concept, but it's very important if you're going to win archery duels in Bannerlord. This is a thing too in Bannerlord. You will definitely get battles over the course of a campaign where both sides have a ranged heavy or a somewhat ranged heavy army, and the AI decides, you know what, we're going to stay at range and shoot you. I'm going to help you win those battles. Now, right away, you can see from the first-person perspective, these guys cannot see the enemy. This little humpback in the hill, if you have that situation, you want to fix it even to this, even to moving towards the enemy. Now, this next 30 seconds is going to be painful because our units are literally running into position closer to the Battanians. They're going to get shot in the face. You're going to see some red death spam. But very quickly, they're getting into place. And now almost every single guy is shooting. Now we're going to focus on movement, right? The spread formation helps them avoid being shot, but you see them scattering around and moving like that. That is because when they're in the original formation that you tell them to, they will continue to try to fit in that formation. I like to tell them to stop. That way they're not wasting any time or efficiency by moving. I've tested this before, and if you don't tell them to stop, they just do worse in the same scenario. So tell your guys to spread, give them elevation, and tell them to stop once they're in the correct position. And you win. That's all there is to it, right? In fact, in this demonstration, I kind of snuck this in on you. We're fighting against fian champs in this battle. Not all, of course. This first demonstration, we will try less fian champs, but the enemy has tier 6 units in addition to tier 4 and 5. We only have tier 4. We should not win this battle, theoretically, and yet we are. So we're going to continue to talk about archers in this series, and we'll try a few more challenge series, and I will continue to talk about archer tactics in Bannerlord. Of course, this is just archer on archer. You'll have to see some of our other tactical guides to see how to use archers with units, but I wanted to cover some of this meta process today, especially with the 1.3 patch as we continue to learn about archers. Now, I wanted to increase the difficulty here. Let's do fians and fian champions. And again, this is after narration. I'll just let you know right now. I moved the number here to 501 because I wasn't quite sure that we could win this battle after all. It's tier 4 and tier 5 Aserai archers against tier 5 and tier 6 Battanian archers. The best archers in the game, and we're going to try to take them on with tier 4 and tier 5 units. Now, in a vacuum, you should never win this battle, right? If we did, there'd be something clearly wrong with the Bannerlord code, and most people know you won't win this battle. However, I happen to encounter on the perfect scenario to teach you guys a very simplistic but deadly tactic. Fans of the channel here on Tactical Enlightenment, of course, this is practically part of their tactical Bible. They say their 10 commandments, and then they say reverse slope decline, kill box, squares, shield and shock, and all the other tactics we teach here. This ridge here, you see this ridge? The enemy's forced to come to that ridge to attack us. We're going to position in the valley and on the hillside opposite of it. Now, what that does is one very big thing. It eliminates a large percentage of their archers from participating. Now, you can't see very well. That's why I'm trying to sort of show you and zoom in on the little green flags. We don't have the green dots from the RTS mod that we had even in just a few episodes ago. So I'm trying to show you where they are. It's about the bottom of the valley to the hillside on the other part of it. Now, this is a disadvantage. The enemy's actually coming up with their archers before we're in place, but because of the reverse slope decline, I don't think a lot of them can shoot. Our guys are kind of running under the cover here of that hillside, and I still think this is going to work. Again, this is not a battle you're ever supposed to win, but this is a very simplistic tactic that is often misunderstood, and we're just going to demonstrate it. We're actually going to do it a couple times in this episode. This first one, though, again, tier 4 and 5 Aserai archers, equal amount against tier 5 and tier 6 legendary Battanian archers. Now our units are getting into position. Of course, I mentioned it before. They're in spread. F2, F3, not scatter. Some guys want to do scatter. Now you want to do F2, F3. Line formation is okay, but then it's hard for the enemy to miss. Now you see our guys shuffling around there. Guys are moving. You also see guys back here. They can't see. Here's another tip. I charge. What that does is every single guy runs until they can shoot. Once they're starting to shoot, those guys towards the front are going to get killed if they keep running. Tell them to stop. So you're basically micromanaging here. Charge until everybody's shooting, Almost everybody's shooting, and then you tell them to stop. And what that does, of course, is it gets them all line of sight. Every guy that's told to charge runs until they have line of sight. You don't want them permanently charging, though, because what's going to happen? These guys are going to charge fian champs. What do you think's going to happen? They get minced meat by two-handed weapons. You want to stay at range in a battle like this. Ironically, we're fighting the fian champs here at range, and we're still smoking them. There's no mods or hacks here. I'm not trying to pull the wool over your guys'. This just shows the value of tactics, as we do on a regular basis on the channel. We show the incredible value of very little adjustments. You will simply start to dominate your enemy. I mean, we were mopping the floor. So we had to give this a shot, right? Let's try tier 6. Only tier 6 fian champions. Should be impossible. 500 fian champions. Heaven forbid, you know, you go up against a player when they have Bannerlord, 500 on 500 battles someday, and they will, whether a modder sets it up or Tailworlds is listening. That's a request I hear all the time. Guys want to have 500 and 500 battles online. I don't think that'll be difficult to set up. Eventually that's going to happen. Well, if you play guys that don't have tactics, you're going to be playing children at chess. They're going to be thinking checkers, and you're going to be obliterating them. Now, there's another landscape here that we can use, a reverse slope decline. Reverse slope declines are usable on about half of the landscapes of Bannerlord, in my opinion. Some are much better than others, and I can talk about that briefly here since the enemy's going to be running to us. First thing is you got that ridge. What are you looking for? You're looking for a ridge where you have kind of a heightened, elevated area where you can't see the other side. If you could see the enemy there like they're coming down a hill, it won't work. It's a pretty simple concept, but you want to have some kind of ridge that the enemy has to come up and over. It's when they come up that they're vulnerable, when they're at the top of it. You can think of it a little bit like a first-person shooting game when there's a guy, camping. What do they call it these days? They call those guys spawn scum campers or something like that. You young guys have all kinds of rhetoric and lingo for shit like that, where the guys basically camp and their crosshairs are like right where you have to come through the door or right where your character spawns out. Same concept here, only we're doing it with their whole army. Now, this has military precedence. A lot of guys on the channel, and not on the channel actually, both of them want to know, like, what is this tactic called? How do I refer to this in the future? How can I learn more about this? The military term for this is called a reverse slope decline. For a long time in the channel, I called it a peekaboo ridge, just because it's a little bit different than a traditional military reverse slope decline, and that didn't really start developing into heavy use until later, until more early modern era. Of course, there are ancient examples. There's no such thing as a tactic that hasn't been tried yet, right? And guys have been human beings, this violent animal. We've been fighting for centuries, and so every tactic has been put out there. So reverse slope decline, peekaboo ridge, if you hear me using those terms, they are interchangeable. It's not a peekaboo rush. That is a different tactic. That's something we'll talk about in a different episode. That has to do with infantry with a major cavalry flank. All right, so our archers are spread and waiting for the first guys, almost like World War I, to come over the ridge. Why don't you guys come on over that barbed wire and get hit with machine guns, right? We have 500 master archers and the tier 4 Aserai archer locked and loaded, and they're firing away. Now, while this massacre, because I know we're going to win this, is ongoing, I want to talk briefly about archers across the game of Bannerlord. Obviously, crossbow and archers are different. The main thing I want to say here, since I don't probably have a lot of time, is that crossbow is front-loaded damage. They shoot better quickly. And of course, the high-end crossbows also have a lot more versatility. They come with shields. They can be used defensively. They can be used in shield walls. They have a lot more melee value because of that. However, they have a lot less ammo. And let me finish on that point. The Aserai archers have some of the most ammo in the game. Even their tier 3 little scrubby light archer has 2 quivers of arrows. That is very valuable, right? That means they can shoot a long time in a battle and you don't have to conserve ammo. It's the opposite of playing something like the Valandian sharpshooters, where you really want to conserve your ammo. Otherwise, you're going to have a bunch of sharpshooters just standing around. Now, I'm not doing this to practice my stealth here. I want to show you guys the back of their Battanian line. They're standing there because they have no line of sight. They haven't yet moved up the conveyor belt of death, and the guys in front of them haven't yet been executed, but it's happening. It's not a massacre, of course, because we are going against tier 6 elite, most people would say OP units. However, we're clearly winning. We're not just winning, this is a rout, right? In fact, I won't be surprised if the enemy routs here soon. I would say the kill ratio here is about 3 or maybe even 4 to 1. Try to get you another view here around this flank. But you see how effective this strategy is. This is the ultimate example. This is tier 6 archers being just ripped apart. It's not that fian champs are weak. They're not. They're my favorite unit in the game. What I mean by that is they are the strongest singular unit in the game. Now that's actually fine. My guy got smoked. Some guys will say cons guards. I don't think so. I think if you use fian champs, let me put it to you this way. If I use fian champs correctly against cons guards, I melt the cons guards. But if I use cons guards correctly against fian champs, I barely win. What my ultimate opinion is, fian champs overall have more value. They're so lethal, and then of course they're just ready on foot to kill. Cons guards are second, but I think fian champs are better. However, in this battle, good night, right? We just smoked 500 fian champs with tier 4 and tier 5 units. So it shows two things. It shows you the value of tactics, but also it shows you the value or at least the problem of the AI in Bannerlord. Now, let's run with it. Let's do one more example here, just a coup de grace, just a finisher to convince folks, and also to show perhaps tactics they've never seen before. Let's do a kill box, right? We focused on the kill box on our channel. We practically invented the Bannerlord version of it, and at this stage we have it down to a science. A lot of guys don't think you can do this with the first-person perspective. Of course, we don't have an RTS mod at this stage of Bannerlord 1.3. I imagine that's coming. By the way, if it has popped up, and there is a RTS mod at the time of this filming, or you know it's been released, that's stable with 1.3, let me know. As a content creator, I would love to have it, of course, to be able to show you things like this from the overhead view. I cannot show you this from the overhead view by getting my character killed because, of course, the AI will take over. All right. Now, I was talking you to death there. We have 628 infantry. It was actually, I think, almost 700 tier 5 Sturgeon units, right? Supposedly really good, strong, tough, defensive Sturgeon infantry. And they have no chance to win this battle. We're going to massacre them. We have 3 major divisions of archers, and then we're going to have this last division basically break off and form an auxiliary division. Now what we're going to do is put our archers into a big crane shape. That's where this tactic comes from, the people who are curious. It's essentially a combination of the tactics used by Hannibal at the Battle of Cannae and other different variations of a reverse crescent, where you pull the enemy in. Once they're vulnerable in the center, you collapse upon them. Now, typically, a reverse crescent, that strategy is used to pincher Hannibal at Cannae. That's used infantry on infantry. In Bannerlord, it's devastating archer against infantry. So, let's see. I got my units confused here. At this stage, all you do is kite. You pre-kite. The singular key to this tactic is keeping your units away from infantry. Well, the advantage you have here is very soon these Sturgeons are going to shield wall. They have to, otherwise they're going to get shot to pieces. By the way, if they don't shield wall, like if say you're playing a human player here online and they're all rushing forward like this, that's okay. Just pre-kite your units earlier, because your archers should move at least similar speed, if not faster than the infantry, because they're not armored. They're lightly armored, heavily armed infantrymen, especially the ones with shields, are going to be slower. That's part of the reason all these Sturgeon heroic line breakers are out in front, but they're also going to be the first to die as they get melted by hundreds of arrows flying. So I can't actually easily tell you what division is where. All I can tell you is that we have 3 big divisions of archers that we're moving back, and the Sturgeons are being pulled into the center. I'm actually going to pull this first division behind me, and I'm so confident on this strategy that we're gonna maybe do some footwork on this episode. I'll get down on the ground and kind of show you what it looks like from the ground level. Some guys say that spinning around on a horse like this makes them confused where they are in relation to each other. It'll be a little bit harder for me, but still something we can pull off. All right, so on that far side over there, that's the 5th Corps, just moving them behind the enemy, right? At this stage, the enemy is being surrounded. On the far side, we have the 6th Corps. Now, there's multiple commands you can do and use to help you here. The first one is stop and or fall back, right? You can have your units fall back. However, I recommend you manually position where units are because the commands F1, F5 for stop or halt or fall back, F1, F6 for stop, they don't always work terrific. In fact, we'll try and engage in this battle, which is F1, F4. For the purpose of archers, engage basically, it tells them to skirmish. If you've never heard of that term, it basically means they try to shoot the enemy, and if the enemy infantry get close to them, they sort of fall back. However, it's not very effective. And let me rephrase. It's not perfectly effective. Because these are big globs of units, and you're telling a whole unit to do something, what'll end up happening is some of the guys will get a little close, they'll get tied up by the enemy, and they'll get killed, right? If you do simply engage in this scenario, you might even lose a whole division as the AI sort of tilts out, loses control of things, just like the Tesla that crashes you and your wife into a building. The AIs, we're still working out the kinks here. Now, the Sturgeons couldn't be more FUCT'd here. They are absolutely fucked. In fact, we haven't suffered a single casualty. Not one Aserai archer is on their back. Meanwhile, the Sturgeons are already full of arrows. Their little incompetent commander here is yelling commands as he throws javelins into the dirt. And I'm using a combination of different commands here. Sometimes I'm pointing and positioning units to a certain location. Sometimes I'm telling them to charge and then telling them to stop, right? If you have a unit charge, they will advance. Sometimes that's important. In this case, on the far side there, I'm telling units occasionally to charge and then stop. If you forget about them, of course, they'll get killed because charge will deliver your archers right up to the enemy. Now, if units get sort of chased down like this, you see how these units on engage are getting really close to being attacked? Just send them way far away, right? The enemy's likely to chase them, have your other units charge, and then send them to the moon, right? The further, the better. The bottom line is, as long as your archers are not getting caught up and destroyed, you got a shot here, right? And we've obviously got more than a shot. Even though they're kind of boring our direction here, these Sturgeons are fucked. It's not a perfect victory here. It's not going to be a casualty-free battle like we've had on the channel at times. But this is the custom battle menu with no captains. I've got, no leadership or skills or anything like that. And we have tier 4 units. I'll remind you of that. The enemy doesn't have any tier 4 units. All tier 5, all tier 6. They're all trying to kill me now. They recognize maybe that I'm the reason they're getting killed. Kill that guy. They're like, that guy there, he's issuing commands. That guy there is killing us all. Somebody kill him. And I'm not going to let him here. We're just going to run around, evade this little pathetic infantryman while our archers finish off the rest of these Sturgeons. They're throwing battle axes at me. They're hitting their friends with their own battle axes. You're hitting your fellas there, boys, on your back. And this battle is over, I think. Yeah, okay, there's like 100 guys here sort of haplessly chasing me from behind, and maybe we suffered 30 casualties and just demolished 700 infantry. So hopefully this episode, brings a lot of information to you fellows out there that are playing Bannerlord. Maybe you're still using F1, F3, or F6. Tactics are dominant. Not only that, you'll feel more accomplished when you perform them in Bannerlord, and this is the place to learn them, friends. I appreciate it. Hit like on the way out. That way more friends find this. And with all that said, I will see you fellas next time.